Oh, welcome, all you doo doo pee pee poo poo heads and not.
All
You
you
like that?
doo-doo pee-pee poo-poo heads. I like that. That's going to
Pee pee
be,
poo poo.
if you are a member of the Black Tower Podcast fandom, you are a doo-doo pee-pee poo-poo head.
Yeah, doo doo pee pee poo poo head. Hello, all you lovely people. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Black Tower Podcast. Is that the nicer way of saying hi? Thanks for tolerating us. I just can't wait for somebody. Can you imagine somebody's at work? They've got us like playing on like low speaker, and all their coworkers here is like, "Hello, all you doo doo pee pee poo poo heads."
I was not expecting that at all. I don't know what I expected, but that was not it.
It's sad that I thought about using that exact verbiage for at least 30 minutes before we started.
There you go, more shoddy.
Yeah, patron benefit is being called names, but it's with
It is
love,
certain. It is with love.
which is better than childhood memories of your dad and you trying to work on the car together. That's fucking
You can't
Trump.
hurt my feelings. I held the flashlight for my dad while he worked on the car.
Not if you ask him. Pointed the light at everything
Oh,
other than what was being worked on. Right.
well, if he would
Oh,
have. We're not going there. I've repressed those memories. Hi, welcome to the Black Tower Podcast. You know me by now. And if you don't know me, you lucky bastard, you get to meet me right now. I'm Josh. I'm Soravan Mahale. How you doing?
and I'm Andrew, the Bajan Mahal. If you don't know me, that means you're making probably better choices in life than I am. So you're both welcome, and also I'm sorry. Which is also what I'll say to you if you ever come up to me in person and say, "Hey, I listened to the Black Tower podcast." I'm like, "That's
You're
awesome," but
welcome.
also I'm
And
sorry.
that'll be our tag. Like that'll be our like tagline. You know, you're welcome and I'm sorry. Oh
Yeah,
shit.
we are a Wheel of Time podcast. We talk all things Wheel of Time. We pick topics, we pick characters, we pick cultures, we pick metaphysical themes, whatever strikes our fancy, we pick. We talk about it from as much or as little of the Wheel of Time book series and TV show series as we want to, because we are a
Sometimes you guys
strong
pick.
independent podcast and we don't need no restrictions on our content.
Yeah, sometimes you guys pick. Sometimes you guys
That's true.
say, "Hey, talk about this." Sometimes
Yeah.
that happens.
And there are some
Um,
suggestions that are on the schedule that
that's true.
that y'all lovely folks have given us. So they are on the schedule coming up in the future to be done. And if you want to leave suggestions in a live format, you can tell us as we're recording or in our super special, super secret, super snazzy patron only Discord channels. You can head on over to blacktowerpod.com and click the fancy Patreon button where you can join our Patreon and support what we do here at the Black Tower Podcast for just $1 a month or more if you want.
Or
And
more.
as you go up in the tiers,
Sky's the limit.
the benefits just get even better. You can go
It's true.
from recording one of our spoiler warnings for us and listening live and getting early access to the episodes, generally about a week early to the episodes outside of listening live. So that's in addition to that, to getting stickers from us every 2 months, to getting one of our fancy dedicated coins with the sword on one side
Oh,
and Black Tower, our
I need
logo
to
on the other
send that
side.
out. Oh my god, Mattias,
Oh
I
yeah,
am so sorry. I'm
I
gonna
meant to
send
ask you that if
something
it was sent
else
out.
to compensate because you need your coin. I apologize. I completely spaced it.
No. And then if we forget too long to send you your coin, we will do extra to apologize.
We'll send you a gift.
Yeah, you can come up to the Ashaman tier and you can get one of these fancy coins that has our dragon head on the front, and of course all the benefits before that. And if you want to find out what else you can do, what other cool things you can get, again, go and check out our Patreon. There's a link on blacktowerpod.com. Go and check it out. We very much appreciate any and all support we get. And if you're like, hey, I don't know yet if I'm ready to throw y'all some pesos, some dineros, some rubles, some yen, the currency. By
Oh yeah.
like the videos, like the podcast, leave reviews wherever you listen to us or wherever you watch us. Leave comments, and that kind of stuff does a ton to help us out. As
It's true. And that's the free brand of support. You don't have to watch a commercial or nothing, unless this counts as a commercial.
I mean, it could, but anyway,
But we're not going to do commercials. We're not talking about commercials. We're talking about the Wheel of Time. And specifically tonight, we're having, which I think is going to be a very fun discussion. I'm excited for this one. Our fact checker Mihail is in the comments. I can already tell he's got his fingers poised. His mouth is dripping. He cannot wait to actually the fuck out of this. And I can't wait for it too, because this is going to be a particularly fun one. Tonight we're discussing objects of power. Angreal, Sangreal, and Ter'angreal.
Yeah. But before we get too far into it, let's go ahead and make sure everybody's safe from the spoilers. And this one's going to be brought to you by a very familiar voice that I'm sure you've heard, though you may not have seen because it is sometimes hard to find them over at North Harbor Podcast. If you get the joke, you get the joke. If you don't get the joke, go and listen to North Harbor Podcast.
You should absolutely.
This is your official spoiler warning. This episode contains spoilers for all 14 books and the prequel. If you're still listening and you haven't read all these, you want to be spoiled, don't you? You crave it. Getting spoiled without putting in the work? Well, get ready. Here it comes.
Wow.
You know how hard it is to like have to cough, but like you also can't because you can't mute the mic because you're playing the spoiler warning.
Yep.
I don't know what's going on. I've had one heck of a day with with my throat. Cause like I was in the middle of talking to people at work today, and like I just started choking on my own spit. And then like I got like the hoarse voice thing where you can't talk. If only I had a Ter'angreal for that.
There's a Ter'angreal for that.
Upset stomach, diarrhea, yay! Pepto-Angreal.
Okay, so let's start off by saying, let's start off with like a little bit of a recap. We've got Angreal, Sangreal, and Ter'angreal. And to our knowledge, those are the only objects of power. Those are the only physical objects that can be small enough to fit in the palm of your hand, or they can be large enough to be the size of a damn building. And Angreal is, you know, if we take into, and we've discussed this before, but this is a very specific aspect of the Angreal. So like, that's why I want to do this recap real quick. But the Angreal says, hey, normally you can only channel a factor of 10. But with this Angreal, you can channel a factor of 2 more. And I'm not going to get into the math of that, but basically the Angreal gives you the capacity to channel just a little bit more than you would normally be able to. And it's got a hard limit to it. It's got a hard limit. It says you can only channel a factor of 2, and that's it. Period. End of story. A Sangreal, to my understanding, is just an Angreal, but without that buffering limit, without that limiting insulation at the end of it, right? So instead of just holding an Angreal and being able to factor, you know, being able to channel another factor by 2, we as a channeler holding a Sangreal would be able to just channel way, way more. The danger there is that you can still eventually burn yourself out with a Angreal. So you need to be careful about, you know, power limits and stuff like that. And Ter'angreal doesn't give you any kind of... Oh, okay. Thank you. See, I told you. We're not even, we're just 10 minutes, barely 10 minutes into the show, and Morshadi's got it. Sangreal do have a buffer. They're just way, way higher. So basically, Sangreal is a big Angreal.
Well, not all of them have a.
Not all of them have a buffer. And then Ter'angreal are not channeling increasing objects at all. Ter'angreal, they might be, but Ter'angreal usually have a function or a purpose. If I channel spirit into this, it'll make someone fall asleep. Or if I channel spirit into this, it'll give me the ability to go into the world of dreams. Okay. Or if I channel fire into this, it'll allow me to create balefire, whatever the case may be. Ter'angreal have a specific activation and a specific purpose. So those are sort of the miscellaneous objects, right? Because a Ter'angreal could literally be anything and literally do anything. And most Ter'angreal are quite feared because most Aes Sedai in the Third Age, at the time of the books, don't understand how they work or what they do. Most of them. Even the ones they do understand, they're like, we don't know why it was made, but, we use it for this now. See the Oath Rod. The current use is vastly different from the original use.
And then there's also the thing where all Angreal and Sa'angreal require you to be able to channel to use, but not all Ter'angreal require you to channel to be able to use.
Yes, some Ter'angreal you don't need to be able to channel to use. Yeah, exactly. So then you've got another division, which is Saidin and Saidar. We do know that Sangreal and Angreal are built and aligned specifically with Saidin or Saidar. And someone channeling Saidin cannot use an Angreal to amplify their powers if it's an Angreal aligned with Saidar. And vice versa. If an Aes Sedai who channels Saidar is holding an Angreal for Saidin, they will not be able to channel additional Saidar because that Angreal only works with the one side or the other, one half or the other.
Yeah.
Ter'angreal, do they have that specification, or is it just one of those like, we made a Ter'angreal and it can be activated with Saidin or Saidar, it doesn't matter? Or does that also, because I know some Ter'angreal have the limiting factor of the different weaves. It either has to be fire or it has to be earth or it has to be spirit or it has to be a combination, etc. Is there a specification about Saidin versus Saidar when it comes to Ter'angreal? I only know of one that I can think of.
I don't think that it's as concrete or consistently a requirement, but in general, Angreal overall, so using Angreal as an overall term for all of them, all-encompassing term, there's none known that can be used by both men and women. But I think that plenty of Ter'angreal get around this by the fact that they perform a specific function. That's not going to always be the case, actually, because they either serve a function that is independent of needing the channeling. So, like the Foxhead Medallion doesn't need channeling for it to serve a function, so anybody can use it.
Right.
But Cad Swain and Nynaeve's paralysis nets only work for women or for Saidar. Right.
But a paralysis net, keep in mind though, a paralysis net is a collection of Angreal and Ter'angreal connected to a Ter'angreal that aligns them all to work together.
Well, I mean, it's independent Ter'angreal. They're physically connected, but they don't interchange. They don't work with each other necessarily.
Right. No, they are
So, like,
individual pieces that are just held
yeah.
together.
So, like, the one that Catswain has that goes off or vibrates or whatever whenever there's whenever there's a male channeler around. Like a male channeler, like it might still do that if it detects Sidene if a man's wearing it, but the parts of it that I think I don't know if I can't remember if Cat Swain's has it, but Nynaeve's has one of them that's called a well. That's part of
She's
her
got a well.
paralysis net. That only works to store Sidair. It doesn't work to store Sidene.
Yeah, and we do know that the paralysis net did exist for men because Rand said in the end says to Cat Swain, "Hey,
Yeah.
that's a nice paralysis." As a matter of fact, the only reason we know it's called a paralysis net is because he says, "Hey, that's a nice paralysis net."
Yeah.
I wore a paralysis net myself. I wore the first paralysis net, and once again, Sidene, Sidar, the division there. So
Yeah. Because we also had the Sleepweaver or the Dream World Ter'angreal. I mean, they're commonly referred to as the Sleepweavers. That it didn't matter. You didn't even have to channel to use one of those. So I think the distinction there, for the most part, is if it's a Ter'angreal that serves a specific function that doesn't include storing some of the one power, like the wells do,
right.
then it doesn't matter. Because I would imagine even if Rand was holding on to the part of the paralysis net, or even had Cat Swain's paralysis net, and another man like channeled Sidene like around him, it would still vibrate and go off.
Okay, but
Because
that I guess that's
like
where my question comes in. That's where my question comes in. So we know that some Ter'angreal don't require a channeling to use. The Dreamweaver, the Foxhead Medallion, you can just use those. As long as it's touching you, it's touching your skin, they just work. But a Ter'angreal that requires the channeling of spirit into it to make it work. And I cannot recall. And the issue we're running into here is that
You mean like the
Black
binding rod?
Tower, huh?
You mean like the binding rods or the oath rods?
Yeah, like well, I mean, I'm getting ready to go there. But there's the balefire rod, there's the red rod, there's the bowl of winds, there's all kinds of Ter'angreal that require the use of channeling. But are they parsed out between Sidene and Sidar?
Okay.
Yes, Reese.
So,
lots. Lou's there and likes to play with the 9 rods of Dominion.
Yeah. So
He summons them.
Masana hints that the most common Ter'angreal used during the Age of Legends, even those that required channeling, could be used by non-channelers. When describing the function of a slender red call rod, she mentioned that powering it required stimulating what she called the standing flows, described as an always-on power source energizing any number of objects.
Right.
This was done by weaving hair-thin flows of fire and earth at 2 of the interconnections. No specification was given regarding the total number of interconnections, but the wording implies a multiple. Because
and
you're talking about like the Age of Legends, where it's a time where like they're using magic almost like we use electricity and oil.
Yeah.
So if like
there
if the one power was fueling the Shokar, then
yeah. And so I believe at one
called.
point in time, one of the Forsaken talked about the Age of Legends and how like weaves just existed. We're just like shink, like we just had weaves going throughout the city that you could just, pick up your Ter'angreal and go patink and plug it in and call it a day. So that Ter'angreal would still require channeling, just not a channeler.
Yeah.
In that kind of, I suppose if you want to make that distinction.
I don't remember what they called the the Balefire rod. What was it? It wasn't the red rod.
Or was it? That was a different rod.
And it wasn't the black rod, was it? Was it?
The 5G Ter'angreal.
Mm.
That's the one right there.
Oh wait, no, it was the fluted black rod. It produced balefire.
Right.
We only ever see that one used by female channelers because Jian Cade uses it against Nynaeve in the Panarch's Palace in Terabon, and Osna Zarmini uses it against the Andorran forces that try to rescue the kidnapped Elaine.
Right.
But other than that, I don't.
So there's two examples I know of where we've got a Ter'angreal that is specific to Sidene and Sidar. One is the Oath Rod. We do have examples, or at least mention of, there are Sidene Oath Rods and there are Sidar Oath Rods, binding rods. Sidene binding rods and Sidar binding rods. And I think the chair of, what was the chair? It's not the chair of cheer.
The chair of remorse?
The chair of remorse. That was also specific to Sidene and Sidar, right? You had a Sidene one and a Sidar one.
I mean, I'll have to look at it. I'm looking at it right now.
The only other Ter'angreal that I know of that is actually, but this one's kind of an outlier, right? It's like a legendary item is Kalendor, because as we know, Kalendor is a Sa'angreal for Sidene. It is also the Sa'angreal for the True Power, but it is also a Ter'angreal for some soul swapping nonsense.
And that's the thing. Like, I don't remember anything being revealed about how, like, some of the binding rods only worked for Sidene and some only worked for Sidare. I don't know. It is okay. 3 more binding rods shown to be in the possession of Moradin. Among other objects of power he owns in his fortress under Blight. It's not known if they are... Okay, so I guess it is, because here at least it says they're not known if the ones Moradin has are attuned to Sidene or Sardar as the others described that we see. Okay, so there it is. So that makes... I mean, it makes sense. Because the way I gather is, like, if it requires channeling into to activate it or use it, then it's going to be attuned to Sidene or Sidar. If it does not require active channeling to activate, then it may have been made by one or the other or both, but it's not attuned to either necessarily.
Right.
So that would be like the Foxhead Medallion. You don't need to channel into it. Or the Sleepweaver ones, or the Red Door Ter'angreal, or the columns at Ruidian.
There's an implied, though, right? When it comes to a Ter'angreal, I mean, we always sort of accept that Sidene spirit flows are essentially the same as Sidar spirit flows, right? Because it's spirit. And when we talk about channeling and weaving, we talk about weaving the 5 flows and calling it a day. And when channelers link, they're all weaving the same thing. They talk about, the different Sidene and Sidar being different, but ultimately still being the same 5 flows of fire, water, air, earth, and spirit. But so does that mean a Ter'angreal, if you channeled at it with spirit, would that same Ter'angreal activate no matter if you used Sidene or Sidar? I'm actually going to say yes.
Mm.
I'm going to say there is no. I'm going to say that's one of the. I'm going to say that's probably one of the keys with the Ter'angreal, because the only things that seem to care is the Angreal and Sangreal, right?
I mean, we don't really know. I mean, those are the only ones we see them really try. I mean, I think there's hints at whenever Elaine is trying to sort through the objects from that she finds in what was the first story, like well, she doesn't really get to sort through the Stone of Tyr ones. The what was it, Ebudar, where they find the other stash,
Yeah, the
where they find the
cache or
Bowl of the
whatever it
Winds.
is.
Yeah, I know there's some that she references that she feels like as she pushes power into it, it just keeps drawing it in and never does anything.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I interpreted. That's what like a Sidene attuned Ter'angreal would do if channeled into by like a Sidar
Well, you definitely would
using.
have. Well, see, and this is a fun conversation with Ter'angreal. You definitely would have Ter'angreal that would be one or the other or both,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it is perfectly within the realm of reason to say some Ter'angreal accept Sidene, some Ter'angreal accept Sidars, some Ter'angreal don't give a fuck.
I don't know. I don't. It would stand to reason that there were Ter'angreal created that accept both. We just never see any. So
Especially
I don't
ones.
know.
Well, okay. What a. Mm.
Because even then, like the two strongest Angreal ever made. Well, no, because there's an argument to be made there that it had to separate out whether it took Sidene or Sidar because of the amount of power it was using, and they couldn't make one that would accept both that was strong enough to withstand that.
Right.
And of course, yeah, I know that's Sangreal, but well, I mean, because my thing is, if you could make binding rods that could be used by either or, why make ones that were attuned to either or?
Well, think about it like this, because even in the Age of Legends, you still had, yes, all channelers were just channelers. There was no men organization and female organization. There was just channelers. We're all channelers. We're all equal. We all live together in happiness and harmony. But it would stand to reason that there would be specific areas of study on the nature of Sidene and Sidar. And so, when you start looking at things scientifically, you start saying, okay, well, what can it do? What can it not do? What are my limitations? What are my capabilities? What are the limitations of these capabilities? And so it would stand to reason to me that I would make a Ter'angreal that is a lighter that only works with Sidene flows of fire, just because scientifically I have the ability to do that. And I'm trying to understand how those two things work. Does that make sense? Did I lose you? Technical difficulties at the Black Tower. He who comes with the wine, you're asking about the Narbacha. And I believe, my guess is that one does use a channeler, because the only time they got it to work was when he scattered the Shido. So my guess is he was channeling into those and sending people around just to fuck with them. But that's a good question on that. But even when they can't, well, wait, doesn't it say that it takes them like a week to recharge? But it only sends them to random places? I'm not sure. Oh, okay. So those weren't even Ter'angreal. That was literally just him fucking with everybody. Oh, okay. That's where I was going to go with this. I was going to go into so Kalendor is the one object that we know interacts with every single aspect of the power. It interacts with Sidene, it interacts with Sidar, it interacts with the true power. It is the one object of power that gets everything. It covers all bases. It is a Angreal for Sidene. It is a Angreal for the true power, but it does not function appropriately or properly unless you are in a circle with people who are channeling Sidar as well. So it's like that is the only object of power that I can think of that I think exists that interacts with literally every aspect of the power. And I find that fascinating because my thinking is, you've got Angreal and Sangreal, and that's basically, if you want to say it's a filter, as I am a filter. If I'm a channeler, I am a filter. It's the one power, but the only bit of the one power that I can interact with is Sidene. Then you've got, oh no. Hi, everybody. Oh, welcome back, Andrew.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to like go back to like another pair of headphones, or whatever. Because it did this to me during a holiday. Now they're doing it to me now, or maybe I need to update the driver for the Bluetooth because it's not voice mod crashing or anything. It's just the connection for the Bluetooth going super spotty and then giving out.
Yeah. So,
Annoying.
so
Because like
the
I knew we were
Angreal and
getting close
Sangreal.
to the Narbaha discussion. I was like, yeah, cool. This is a good fun part of the discussion. And my AirPods were like, yeah, no, fuck you.
Well,
Yeah,
if you want to backtrack to the Narbaha.
Well, no, that was it. Because like Morshadi already pointed out. I mean, the namesake is full boxes. That was the thing. Like, those would have been an example of somebody that could channel Sidare using something meant for Sidene, but in reality, they didn't do anything. Just Samael was sitting there watching and being like, "Oh, cool, I'll make one for you."
Yeah, and of course they couldn't see because they can't. Even the ones that can't channel Sidene, and even if they could channel Sidene, they wouldn't be able to see the flows because I'm sure he would have inverted them.
Yeah. But as for this question, are the seals a Ter'angreal? Yes.
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 100%. They are. They would have to be, right? Because not only are they the literal sort of locks on a metaphysical door, but the Dark One has access to them from its side of the interdimensional sealed rift.
I mean, I get what you're saying, and I ultimately agree. I would argue the semantics that I wouldn't use the word access. Because his counterstroke on Sidene and the taint on Sidene and Sidene being an integral part of the seals is what allows his essence, or whatever you want to call it, to erode them over time, despite the fact that they're made of Quendiar. So you can affect them. So ultimately, yes, I agree.
To them.
Well, I mean, you can touch a secure door, even if you can't go through it.
Right.
And given the time, you could erode it from the outside to get to the inside. You can touch it, but
right,
you don't have access. That's why I said it was a very semantic argument for me to make that I wouldn't say access. Ultimately, the ideal behind what you're saying, I absolutely agree with.
Yeah.
He can at least reach out and touch them. So, because me, access would mean that he could just go ahead and like get to the core of them, break them, and move on to do what he did, and the seals would be pointless.
And this is kind of the interesting thing is that because now He Who Comes with Wine is asking a really good question. So, are they designed to interact with all three? I'm going to say no.
No.
I'm going to say no. I'm going to say they're not designed to interact with all three. As a matter of fact, they were only designed to interact with Sidene. because it was Sidene that was
True.
tainted, and the Dark One was not attacking after the fact, was not attacking Sidene, was physically eroding the physical manifestation of the seal holding that rift closed, and was unable to access Sidene again. Because, and we even know this because when Rand is fighting the Dark One and they're going through their building universes upon universes upon universes, in one of those universes, the Dark One's like, yeah, no, I have full access to both Sidene and Sidar now, and I've tainted them so much, and the only way you can channel and not go insane is if you swear to me, and then I give you access to clean Sidene and Sidar.
I swear to me.
Swear to me.
So I agree with part of the sentiment that Wayne just said, because Luz wanted female channelers to be a part of it, and I think that's why he used Quindiar as the anchor point for the Weaves, that made them into Ter'angreal. Because the more you try to destroy Quindiar, the stronger you make it, which is what makes it such an incredible material. It'd be like having kinetic armor or ballistic armor, and the more you shoot it with a 22 and it gets a little bit stronger. You shoot it with a 50 cal, it gets way stronger. Think like Oobleck without a breaking point. But like Oobleck, that would require immediate hit shock damage.
Yes.
But much like Oobleck, what the Dark One does is he slowly erodes it over time, just like you can slowly put your hand through Oobleck and it won't get stuck or stopped against the solid. Because the Dark One, he doesn't erode like the weaves that make up the Ter'angreal part of the anchors on his prison. He erodes the physical component that they're anchored to, because without the anchor point, then they can't be anchored anymore. But I do think that Lews Therin like maybe deliberately used Quindiar because he's like, if these ever get weak, then whoever survives or anybody can just come out here, throw a bunch of channeling weaves into the Quindiar like they're trying to break it, and they'll actually make it stronger and rejuvenate it. Maybe that was part of his thought. And then, everybody went insane.
And the other thing is, too, he wanted women to be there, but we know they were not, because in the creation of those seals, in that whole interaction, Sidene is what was tainted. Sidene is what was, affected by the backlash. Sidar was just fine. And as we've discussed before, the ladies of the time were slow to act, and Lews Therin was desperate to act. And, for better or worse, he bought them a few thousand years to figure out a solution.
Yeah. I'm trying to find where they're
obviously there were some unintended consequences.
Yeah. I mean, that's like the namesake of like half of the entire book series. Let me do thing. Oh no, unintended consequence.
I mean, it's almost like, real life where you do the thing.
Yeah. The thing is, like, I don't know that Lews Therin brought these. Hold on. So, because Rand says to Egwene about the seals, he's talking like, from his memories as Lews Therin, that I crafted these, he whispered. I made them to never break, but I knew as I did it that they would eventually fail. Everything fails when he touches it. I'm trying to find exactly, because I don't know that because if they already had these seals ready and brought with them, then either it's part of the plan that Lews Therin had put together to do the seal, or they have had to seal people away in a shape or form before, which would make sense as to how they were able to seal away the Forsaken as well. I don't know.
Okay, I always interpreted that line to be something like, he's a real smart guy, right? He may not understand how a thing is going to happen, but he does understand that a thing is going to happen. And he understood in the moment that his solution was an imperfect seal. He didn't understand how, he didn't know why, but he knew that eventually this imperfect seal would fail. That was always my interpretation of that particular interaction. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. Just looking to see if I could find anything about when they were actually made. I mean, I don't I don't exactly know. I mean, we've seen from Egwene that you can channel into a pre-existing object and turn it into Quindiar.
Right.
So, who's to say that the 100
Oh,
companions weren't carrying Aes Sedai banners into battle, and Lews Therin turned the Aes Sedai symbols on the banners into the seals? Like,
oh,
it could be almost anything.
yeah.
Or he could have they could have absolutely had them made before. These honestly, the fucking Quindiar plate, they could have legitimately just been like plates that they ate off of, and it was like that's all we have to use.
Yeah.
Bam, Quindiar or whatever. Um, I'd believe any of it. I mean, given that Lews Therin was a tactician and strategist, I would like to think that they brought it in. I mean, you're living at the height of experimentation with magic and technology. I would imagine that at some point they at least had a concept of how to seal away big baddies that like the binding rods or the binding chairs don't work on or aren't sufficient to deal with.
Aren't sufficient in capability or aren't sufficient in
Severity?
tort requirements, like legal requirements.
I would say like not sufficient um in like capability or something. They're kind of like a he's too dangerous to be kept alive scenario.
Okay.
Is what first came to mind. Um but we see this in like there's a bunch of like novels, like fantasy novels that do this where they can basically download your brain into like a stasis server, and like your punishment is 1,000 years in stasis. And so like they suspend your consciousness like either in like a cryogenic like a box, or like they download your consciousness to like a computer server for like 1,000 years, and you come back and that's your punishment for committing a crime or something. Seems a little too barbaric for the Age of Legends, but
Yeah.
Age of Legends also wasn't nearly as peaceful and kind and easygoing as it's
Well,
alluded to be.
yeah. And that might be a discussion for another time, but yeah, no, some of their punishments were quite uh, decisive.
I mean, to be fair, the concept of punishing you by absolutely overriding and removing your free will, um, in an unavoidable way. I mean, I've said this 1,000 times when we talk about like the binding rods or the oath rods. Like, you prevent somebody from doing anything bad
Right.
by making them completely incapable of doing anything bad, doesn't inherently make them good.
Yeah. What's the saying? Is it's like a man who cannot commit violence is no better than the man who does commit violence. What is it?
Talking about like not committing violence because you're incapable isn't like a badge of honor. Like it doesn't mean
Yeah.
anything.
It doesn't mean
It
anything if you
doesn't mean
can't do
anything
it.
to not do something you already can't do. Like I can't.
Guess
like,
what, guys?
I choose not to fly. It doesn't fucking matter because I can't fly. That doesn't mean anything.
I choose not to use my financial influence as Rockefeller did, and start a monopoly on a needed commodity. Cool. I don't get to brag about that because I can't do that. So I'm not. My heart and my mind aren't changed because of that. But what you have is you now have people who are still very much desirous to participate in these actions, but now are unable to because of the binding effect of these kinds of things.
Oh, and there's Wine hitting us up in the patron live recording chat in Discord with some knowledge from the Tarvalon.net
snap.
website that Loose Aaron's initial plan to cut off the Shadow's touch needed six male and 7 female Aes Sedai of moderate strength, and he had already made the 7 Quindiar seals with the symbol of the Aes Sedai to use as focus points for the weaves. But Latra's maneuvering, however, made his plan much more difficult to implement. Which that last part, that's a misrepresentation, in my opinion, of what happened. Because initially, like we talked about this earlier in a couple episodes ago or several episodes ago, like Loose Aaron brought this before the Hall. The Hall was like, "No,
Right.
we should do the Choden Call route," and he was like, "Okay, I'll wait for the Choden Call."
Right.
And then the access keys were in a city that was conquered by the Shadow, overrun by the Shadow. And he went back to the Hall. Was like, "Cool, I did it your way, and look what happened. We've lost access to the most powerful weapons ever created by man.
Yeah. Now
Now
potentially,
we have no other option."
potentially the forces of the shadow have access to our nuclear arsenal.
Yeah,
They don't have time, and that I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the implication was that Latra was like, "Okay, cool, do your thing, but I'm not sending any women with you."
Yeah, I think Latra
And this
was
is actually,
holding out hope
yeah.
that they could recover him, even though they had already tried several times and it failed. Like everyone they sent to try to recover them wound up not returning.
Yeah. And this is actually one of the reasons why I did not like the interaction with. It could be, but it's not because of the
But yeah,
implication.
so at least that answers
But-
that because I do believe that he would. That makes sense that he would have made the Quindiar, or they would have made
Hmm.
the Quindiar seals beforehand. And it is,
Yeah,
at least he had a plan. It makes sense.
Yeah, it would make sense because, again, we know he was an extremely intelligent person who had extremely well thought out, intelligent plans. What he lacked was the viciousness
Cooperation?
required
The
that the
cooperation
shadow
of his
had.
cohorts.
Yeah. And the cooperation of his cohorts.
Hmm.
Yeah. I feel like there's a lot of
give
times where
Latra
Luce
all this
Theron was
kinda-
like,
Mhm.
I was just gonna say, I feel like there's a lot of times where Luce Theron was like, "Okay, we got to do this," and everybody went, "That's so mean. Why would you do that?" And he's going, "Guys, we're at war. No,
It's literal Satan.
we can't do that. We've got to look for it. And I don't even mean that to be like satirical or make. I'm not making fun of anybody. I can see that as being an actual argument that they were having.
Mm-hmm.
Keep in mind, this is a society that had not seen war in what, hundreds of years, 100 years,
At least not full on war. Like they probably saw
not in their
skirmishes.
lifetime, at the very least.
Not full on war.
Yeah.
Skirmishes and little disputes, absolutely, sure.
What they have is what we have, is the equivalent of, I saw the World War II documentary. Ooh, that looks scary. I don't want that. Well, nobody wants it. But when you've got someone at your doorstep going, "No, there is no other alternative. I am coming in and I'm going to end you and everybody in here." Like, and I can see Luce Theron kind of being like, "Okay, we don't really have a choice." The fight has been brought to us, and now it is time for us to defend ourselves. And the only way we're going to defend ourselves is by ending the ability of our enemies to continue perpetrating this violence against us. And that requires some extreme acts of violence in a lot of cases.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and even then, like, his plan didn't involve like killing anybody. It would just seal them away. Like, they wouldn't be dead. They would just be in like permanent stasis. Which, I mean, yeah, you can make plenty of arguments. Like, is that a moral thing to do or not? I kind of think morality goes out of the window whenever you're literally massacring entire villages and cities of civilians. But that's me. So yeah, but ultimately, like that was the plan. Anyway, we're delving more into like the nature of the seals and sealing than we are like Angreal, Ter'angreal, and all that. But yeah. So with that, I think like that would make the seals more of like a pseudo Ter'angreal, not really a true Ter'angreal. They're just anchor points for weaves.
Yeah. Well, it's a very specific Ter'angreal. It does one thing. And it doesn't, after that one thing has been assigned, it doesn't have any more. It's like a program, right?
Well, the seals themselves don't do anything.
Yeah.
They're anchor points.
Right. Yeah. So what I'm saying,
that's where I was like, yeah, because I said earlier, I was like, yeah, no, they're definitely Ter'angreal, and now I'm like,
did he use? Okay. Oh my god. So, the weave known as aligning the matrix is the weave that we know as making power wrought weapons and items, right?
I believe so, yeah.
So what if the seals are not a Ter'angreal, just like a power wrought sword is not a Ter'angreal? What if they made the Quendiar seals, which would explain why we have a half white and half black Quendiar seal, right? Because isn't it confirmed somewhere that Quendiar made with Sidene is black and Quendiar made with Sidar is white? I want to say that's a thing. But if they made the Quendiar seals in advance, and then he used a kind of aligning the matrix to imbue the Quendiar seals, the Quendiar discs, with a weave, and that weave is comprised entirely of Sidene and is imbued or aligned into the very fabric of the Quendiar seals, which is why those seals are, which is why the weave is intact for so many years, because the Quendiar is actually holding and keeping the weave intact. That is a mind fuck. Did any of that make sense? Please tell me it did, because my head is like going a million miles an hour right now.
So we don't have any concrete that Sidare makes white Quendiar and that Sidene makes black Quendiar, but that is the prevailing theory. Because the Domination Band is also made from black Quendiar.
Exactly.
So yeah, I guess that would. I feel like that would lend itself to that theory is. Theory is probably closer to being the truth than it is not. So. But yeah, so.
Yeah.
What? So with that, I think we kind of answered like the initial question about for Ter'angreals. I think is that if it requires If it doesn't require any active channeling to activate, then it's essentially one power neutral. Um, Not to mention the fact that it just doesn't require the one power to activate to do anything. And then if it does require channeling, then it will be dependent on whichever side of the one power it's attuned to. If it was attuned to Sidene, then it requires Sidene. If it was attuned to Sidar, it would require Sidar. Like
Okay.
I don't think you could take Nynaeve's paralysis net and store Sidene in her well.
No, not in the well. No.
Like so that one would be attuned to Sidair.
And that is specific to the one power.
Mhm.
So if you have a
Could you activate any
sort
of them with the true power? Could you store true power in Nynaeve's well?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
And the reason I don't think so is
I think it would
because
actually break it if you tried. I think that would actually
when
destroy it if you tried.
when Moradin holds Kalendor at the end of the book, he realizes that not only was it Moradin or was it Rand? I think it was Moradin, but he realizes that it is a Angreal for Sidene and for the true power.
Well,
And he's
Sidair.
surprised.
It's the
Inside, yeah.
one that is a Angreal for all.
And he's surprised by that, by the fact that the true power is included in that list. He's like, oh, no way. Talk about an item that is like way OP.
Let's see. So Lions asking questions. So apparently Cimarog's copies of the domination bands are still black. So we know the Adam, which can be used against female channelers, were all made by female channelers. So I would think that the same would have happened and be true of the domination band. If you're making something specifically to create a controllable link using Sidene, then you need to be able to use Sidene to control Sidene. I believe that's where I go with. What do you think, Josh?
Yes. I would well, and that was kind of where I was going with my question earlier of, is Sidene spirit different from Sidar spirit? Because I know we don't have any confirmation, but sometimes things happen and sometimes we get different results with sight. Oh no, to the earbuds go again. Yeah. All right, and I will say this: is the Eye of the World a huge well? Yes, that would be my guess. I think that would, but I think the Eye of the World is a unique well. Well, is it, or is it just a well that's big enough that you can see into? Because that's a really great point, though, because they actually talk about like someone drops like a rock into it, and the pure raw Sidene just kind of like dissolves it. I think it would be a well. Yeah, I think it would be kind of a unique well, maybe like a legendary well kind of a thing, where it wouldn't be just a regular well. It would be a well that was made with a nat 20 roll. Or maybe it's just a regular well, except for it's like massive. I don't know. That would imply understanding the mass of Sidene and Sidar, which we know that there are.
Is this thing working now?
Now I'm working. Now I can hear you.
Right. My computer and I are going to fight once we get done with this episode. So sorry, I didn't get to hear your
I
conversation.
was just talking about the eye of the world being a well, because Wine was asking, is it a well? And I'm saying yes. I'm saying it was just a very large well. But the difference between the eye of the world and like the well that Nynaeve carries would be that the eye of the world was so large that you could actually physically touch raw Sidene. You can see it as if it were water.
Not recommended.
Not recommended. No.
I mean, I don't know, because like what the wells do is you just impart the one power into them until they're full, which I guess you can make the argument that that's what they did too, with the addition of the female Aes Sedai applying the filter to filter out the taint from it. So, I mean, yeah, no, I could see it. Yeah, sure. If the eye of the world's only, if it was built specifically with the one power to hold Sidene, then yes, it's a Ter'angreal. Which seems to be the case, because I don't think you could just, if physically touching pure Sidene apparently would have dire consequences, like touching fucking acid, like it would just be too much and would just overload and burn your body, then they wouldn't have just like dumped it into like, old man Jenkins' well into Blight. It would have just eroded everything away. So
yeah, no, and I think you've nailed it right on the head there, Wine. Incomplete metaphysics. If there's one thing we know about Robert Jordan, it's that he was the master of making things seem cut and dry and simple and well established and firm, but that's not the case at all. That's
especially
not the case
in book
at all.
one.
Yeah. You are presented with a world with rules, and as the world continues to expand and grow, so does our understanding of those rules, and so does the application of a lot of those rules. And you kind of go, that's not exactly what I thought it was. And it's pretty good. So,
But
final thoughts?
Yeah, no, I agree. That's pretty much what I was about to do without even saying it, I guess. Now that I'm thinking about what I was about to say. In terms of Angreal being hard coded to Sidene, Sidair, or True Power, with the obvious, staggeringly surprising, glaring exception of Kalendor, I would say yes. They're hard coded to one of the three, normally Sidene or Sidar, unless they're a Ter'angreal that does not require channeling to complete its programmed purpose. So if it's something like the Redstone Doorways, or the Sleepweaver Ter'angreal, or the Foxhead Medallion, or the Sidene, Sidair detectors, parts of the Prowess Net, all that kind of shit, then those are absolutely power neutral. They at most they react to a specific power in the case of the Sidene Sidear detectors, but for everything else, yeah, it's hard coded. I still believe that there definitely had to be ones that could use both, but given the overwhelming number that exists that are hard coded to only Sidene or Sidear, if there were ones created that could use both, like Kalendor, which maybe Kalendor is a residual of them doing experiments to try to make one that could use both, that any of them that were made would have been towards the end of the Age of Legends into the breaking of the world in the War's Shadow, and were either destroyed or have been lost or whatever the case is. So, yeah, they're all locked to their specific power. So, which is probably a good thing.
Yeah, and I just kind of add on to that. I agree. I feel like the majority of Ter'angreal we have in the story are hard coded to one or the other. But given the fact that we know that the creation of Angreal and Sangreal, they're created in pairs. One coded Sidene, one coded Sidar. Cool. Great. Ter'angreal, my guess is that there are plenty of Ter'angreal that are hard coded one way or the other. But remember, if you don't know it's a Ter'angreal, you can go your entire life with, Grandpa had that statue of a dude wearing a helmet, and that's just something that's been passed down in the family for hundreds and hundreds of years. They say it's from the Age of Legends, but I don't know. It's a Sidene Ter'angreal, and nobody's ever identified it because nobody channels Sidene. Cool, great, wonderful, awesome. But also, given how few remaining Ter'angreal there actually are in the world, many of them were destroyed, many of them were lost. I feel like to say that the Ter'angreal we have in the main story cannot be said to be an accurate representation of what a Ter'angreal is capable of, which is a big statement to make, because the Ter'angreal in the stories are capable of everything from making fire to literal interdimensional travel. Like, so, but yeah, no, God, Angreal, Sangreal, and Ter'angreal, once again, a deceptively simple topic, or deceptively complicated topic. You think you get into it, but you start chewing on that bone, and man, there's a lot of marrow there.
Yeah, no. It's the thing is, like, both like a simple. I think the overarching question has a simple answer, but when you start getting into the specifics, is where it starts getting a bit more complicated. It's like exactly that meme of the dude sitting there like looking at the butterfly, and it's like, is this a bird? You're sitting there, is this a Ter'angreal?
Is this a Ter'angreal?
So, yeah.
Awesome. All right, well,
let us know what you think in the comments down below, comments on the podcast, whatever the case is. Let us know in a review. If you think we're absolute morons and don't know what we're talking about, feel free to say that. We will treat your comment with the respect it deserves. Which, if that's what you're saying and you mean it earnestly, then the respect it deserves is 0, and we will treat it as such. But thanks for the free engagement.
Also, like, if you're going to leave a comment with a critique in it, cool, great, but be open to hearing our response.
Make sure your spelling's right, because as we know, the rules of the internet say that if you make a spelling mistake in your counter argument, you're automatically wrong. But
yeah, that's right.
Let us know what you think. Also, let us know what were some of your favorite Angreal, Angreal, Ter'angreal, in the series. What are some things you think maybe are Ter'angreal or any other kind of Angreal that we said weren't, and vice versa? Let us know. We want to hear what you think down below. And if you don't want to put it in the comments on YouTube, make sure you head over to our Discord, and you can chat with us there and everybody else in the Discord, and y'all can have fun arguing back and forth while I'm normally too busy at work to be able to check too much of the Discord. But with all that being said, we're going to go ahead and sign off for this episode. Thank you all for listening. Thank y'all so much for your support, whether it's just listening and helping us out, or if you're on Patreon, or if you're liking the video, sharing it out. If you're not doing that, please do that. It really does help us out a lot. But for all of us here at the Black Tower Podcast, I have been Andrew. Yo Bajan Mihail.
And I have been Josh Sorovan Mihail. And thanks for listening. Thanks for being awesome. Thanks for supporting us by subscribing and hitting the like button. And thanks for being here for your weekly dose of taint. And we hope that wherever you are, you leave here just a little